name is Joel and I work for Essex St Cheese, managing our education and marketing programs. I'm really excited to introduce you to a truly remarkable gouda. It's called Vildavaida, and it's a raw cow's milk gouda from the Netherlands. In a world of thousands of goudas from countless countries, it seemed almost like the traditional farmhouse cheese, Boeren Kaas, had been lost to the age of industrialization. But thanks to the commitment of our Dutch partner, Koster, we are honored to celebrate this gem of a gouda made on a tiny island by the most beautiful family. I want to share with you some really important information today about the history of Boeren Kaas, how this cheese came to be made, and then most importantly, the partnership that makes this truly a one-of-a-kind rare beauty. Gouda cheese dates back to the 1300s in a small village in North Holland, Gouda, that was surrounded by many small Boeren, or farms, that made their own cheese using their own cows. Farmers would bring their cheeses to the town center where professionals would inspect their goods to begin negotiating its sale in the marketplace. So while Gouda was the town, it represented an opportunity for these small farmstead producers to have a bit of variety in each recipe while receiving feedback to improve the cheese. This became even more important as the Dutch began exploring the world for their trade and needed sources of protein on their long sea journeys. Additionally, out of fear that the country might one day sink underwater, they shared their dairy culture wherever they went in case they may have to one day move there permanently. This is why there's very little protection on the Gouda recipe, and the top two producers of Gouda in the world are South Africa and New Zealand. So then, what is Gouda? While there are a few rules associated with specific producers in the Netherlands, there's no PDO like that of Comté, Manchego, or Parmigiano Reggiano. Rather, the true identity of Gouda is associated with its recipe technique, which is a result of necessity. Much of cheese making is a happy accident, and Gouda is a great example of that. Historically, when you made cheese in Italy, France, and Switzerland, you would heat the milk with rennet in a copper vat over fire that allows for the proteins in liquid to separate to curds and whey. However, the majority of the Netherlands is below sea level, which meant limited access to copper, so they made their vats out of wood instead. If you were to place your wooden vat over a fire to heat your milk, what would happen? Well, you'd have one messy bonfire. So they developed another technique to heat the milk by flushing the vat with hot water. This also stops the acidification of the milk, meaning less lactose is converted into lactic acid and makes for a tighter curd. This results in a cheese that is denser in texture and sweeter in flavor with less animal notes. As you can see here, hot water is circulating the vat, as I mentioned, and the excess whey is running off in a drain below. While this technique was developed almost 1,000 years ago, it is still universally used today in making Gouda cheese all over the world. Today, the majority of Gouda is made from pasteurized cow's milk in large cooperative settings. Ones like the L'amuse signature Gouda are great for representing the classic aged Gouda with the bold, nutty, and sweet flavors that are loved globally. But is anyone still making cheese according to tradition, using raw milk from their own animals? This is what Daphne Zeppos wondered in 2008 when she traveled to Amsterdam to meet Koster at Fromagerie L'amuse. Daphne packed up all of the Goudas she could find in the stores into a suitcase and brought them to Betty. Betty's the equivalent of Randolph Hodgson's Neal's Yard Dairy, working closely with individual producers to provide feedback that improves a recipe and a consistent market via retail, wholesale, and export that allows for these traditional producers to continue in their practice. When the majority of milk in the Netherlands is sold as powdered milk to Asia, there's a great deal of pressure on small producers to just sell their milk to large processors and take the paycheck, especially as the younger generation opts for professional careers in the bigger cities. So when Daphne showed her the suitcase and asked, "Can we do better?" Betty replied emphatically, "Absolutely. Let me show you Vildavaida, the best of our country." Vildavaida, meaning wild meadow in Dutch, is made on Zwanenburger polder in the province of Zuid-Holland, or South Holland, near the famous Leiden, where cheese with caraway, cumin, and fenugreek cheeses originated and made their way onto ships like that in Herman Melville's Moby Dick. This small island is home to the Malchy family, who have been making cheese on their farm here for 6 generations. In the 90s, Jan, the father and cheesemaker, noticed that the small Leiden and other Boeren Kaas cheeses were disappearing. The heritage of this area, known as the Green Heart, which is located between Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and The Hague, was being lost to large commercial farming. Yet they were sitting on the best diversity of grasses in all of the Netherlands. As a newlywed, he decided to embark on another new adventure by bringing back an extinct recipe of making raw milk cheese on his own land that he would convert to organic. His wife, thinking she had married a madman, had studied music in France and fallen in love with Montbéliard cows that are used to make Comté. She said, "If you're going to trap me on this island and be the laughingstock of all of our neighbors, at least use the Montbéliard cows because they are very pretty." In love with his wife, Jan brought almost 50 cows over from France by boat to a small island farm and began grazing them on his 2 kilometers of meadow. Every year, Jan waits to mow the grass till June in order to create adequate habitats for local birds to hatch their spring eggs. This also yields a diverse and floral diet for his cows to munch on fresh during the warm months and then dried as hay for the wet winter months. This cheese is truly farmstead, with the creamery being located just 20 feet from the kitchen and adjacent to their caves where the cheese is aged the first 3 months. Jan uses antique wooden presses just as they did in times past and hand hoops the curd from the vat into the molds to bring them over to the press. He only makes 6 to 8 wheels a day, 5 days a week, 46 weeks a year. They have a great insurance policy set up with farmstead cheesemakers where they establish contracts for factories to buy their milk 2 days so that they can have a weekend off from cheese making. But additionally, if they have anything come up in the case of illness or vacation or injury, they have this existing relationship of someone who will guarantee to buy their milk to make bottled milk, yogurts, and other dairy products for a market value price. This allows for the Vaucher family to live a sustainable lifestyle, making the cheese they love. It truly is a family affair with the Vauchers. Their eldest son, Joost, has returned from his world in marketing in Amsterdam to help the farm step forward into biodiversity and partnering with local producers to improve the reputation and collateral of small farmers in an increasingly competitive industry. Jan continues to make the cheese alongside his son and take care of the cows, but Rose, the mother, puts her classical singing skills to use by singing songs to the cheeses while she cares for them in the caves. When Daphne visited in 2008, she couldn't help but fall in love with the cheese, the people, and the story, and knew this had to be a cheese for Essex. But she wanted the age profile to be closer to 15 months compared to 3 to 6, allowing for the deeper, more rustic and juicy tropical flavors to shine through. Unable to hold the cheese for that long in his tiny cellar, Betty struck an agreement that allows her to buy the cheeses at 3 months to bring to her oplegger, or affineur, where she also ages the L'amuse signature, Brabander, and Rispens goudas at a temperature similar to that of Jan's cave. The resulting texture is that of perfectly embedded crystals in a decadent paste from the rich Montbéliard milk, while the raw nature of the landscape shines through. Seasonal variation occurs since the diet switches from pasture to hay in spring to winter, meaning the bright pineapple and juicy butter notes of the warm weather batches turn into rustic amaretto and deep stone fruit cooked in butter for the cool weather batches. Betty buys 80% of Vildavaida's production, and we buy 90% of that. This cheese is truly one of a kind and exceptional in its impression. I really appreciate you taking the time to learn about our beautiful Weide Boeren Kaas. If you have any more questions, please do not hesitate to reach out at racheljewel@essexcheese.com.